One of the most influential arguments for the existence of God is the Kalam Cosmological argument. Originally formulated by medieval Islamic philosophers like al-Ghazali, it was revitalized in modern times by Christian philosophers such as William Lane Craig. Today, we're going to break it down, explore its objections, and see if it holds up to scrutiny. What is the Kalam Cosmological argument? The argument is very simple, yet profound, and it follows a fairly logical syllogism. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore, the universe has a cause. This cause, as argued by Craig, must be timeless, spaceless, immaterial, and immensely powerful, what many identify as God. Let's look at some popular objections. Objection 1. Infinite regress. One major objection is that the universe doesn't necessarily require a beginning. Some argue that an infinite regress of past events is possible. If time stretches infinitely into the past, then the universe may not need a first cause. William Lane Craig counters with the impossibility of an actual infinite. He argues that an actual infinite past would lead to paradoxes, such as Hilbert's Hotel, where an infinite number of occupied rooms could still accommodate new guests, leading to logical absurdities. Another paradox is the light bulb paradox. Imagine a person flips a light switch at decreasing time intervals, once at 1 minute, and then 1.5 minutes, and then 1 3/4 minutes, and it continues to half. They keep doing this until they reach 2 minutes. So an infinite number of events happen in a finite amount of time. And at exactly 2 minutes, we ask, is the light bulb on or off? Since no single last flip determines the final state, the bulb status at that moment becomes undefined. And this obviously reveals a contradiction because we know that the bulb can only ever be on or off. It can't be, in a intermediate state where it's sort of on, sort of off. That's just not possible. As David Hilbert says, infinity seems to be very well understood in the field of mathematics. However, when applied to the real world, things start to get a little dicey, to say the least. Not to mention the overwhelming cosmological evidence of the Big Bang and the finitude of the universe. In combination with the impossibility of infinite regresses, this objection is refuted. Objection 2. Quantum mechanics. Some physicists claim that quantum mechanics challenges the first premise. Virtual particles appear and disappear all the time without a discernible cause. Craig responds that quantum events don't actually emerge from nothing, but a quantum vacuum, which is in a sea of fluctuating energy governed by physical laws. True nothingness lacks properties, making it incapable of producing anything. Moreover, quantum mechanics describes probability distributions, not uncaused events. The fact that we can predict decay rates and interactions show that underlying laws govern these processes, which contradicts the idea that they're truly uncaused. Objection 3. Mereological nihilism. A less common but fascinating objection comes from mereological nihilism, the view that composite objects do not fundamentally exist. Rather, they are merely a rearrangement of atoms, basically. This view challenges the first premise, stating that everything that begins to exist has a cause. And when you think about, for example, a cup, you may say that it began to exist when it was manufactured, but all the particles which made up the cup always existed, since matter can neither be created nor destroyed. So when we say something begins to exist, it's really only a rearrangement of already existing particles. So then, the only thing that truly began to exist is the universe, making the argument circular. While mereological nihilism challenges the first premise, and in my opinion it somewhat refutes it, it doesn't necessarily undermine the Kalam cosmological argument. Here's why. Change is not the same as creation. Even if objects are just rearrangement of particles, they still undergo transformations that bring new things into existence. A car didn't exist before its parts were assembled. If mereological nihilism was true, there would be no meaningful distinction between a pile of metal and a functioning engine, since both are just collections of particles. Yet we recognize real differences, suggesting that new entities do come into being. Objection 4. Who created God? Perhaps the most famous objection. If everything that begins to exist needs a cause, then what caused God? Craig says this is simply a misunderstanding of the premise, and I would completely agree. Premise 1 says that everything that begins to exist needs a cause, and in the conclusion, it clearly says that the universe needs a cause, and Craig explicitly states that the cause must be timeless, spaceless, and eternal, thus not having a beginning. Therefore, we can conclude that God doesn't need a cause since he never began to exist. The Kalam cosmological argument remains a powerful case for God's existence, but it isn't perfect, of course. Nothing is. And whether you find it convincing or not, it forces us to ask deep questions about the nature of the universe and existence itself. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.